Laura, presidents' second terms are notoriously difficult, and the fact is that although the president won re-election, he didn't give us much of an agenda for a second term during the campaign. What do you expect from him now that he no longer has to worry ever again about re-election?
Well, I think it's instructive to go back to 2010 when the Republicans obviously had that great midterm election. And for Republicans thinking that compromise is the answer for their political future, I would say, think about what President Obama did that actually ended up helping him win a huge re-election victory. He decided not to moderate, not to necessarily compromise on pretty much any issue. He decided to double down on liberalism, and he marketed it in a new way, and he sold it to Latinos, and he found inflection points with women voters, and he did it masterfully with Jim Messina and the whole crew in the re-election team. So I would think Republicans and conservatives should figure out what they stand for.
Wait a second. We're going to talk about Republicans in the next segment.
I got that. But my answer is I think the president is going to go full steam ahead with his agenda, which is a socially progressive and very liberal agenda. I think we heard talk of compromise before, Senator. We heard it during health care, and in the end, it was my way or the highway. He got it the way he wanted it with very little support. I think you're going to see that again.
He did extend the Bush tax cuts for a year, so that was some compromise on his part.
Well, he had to do that. Even Democrats were obviously urging him to do that this time. But now, in a second term, without really any check, I think Obama doubles down on all the things he really wants to do. I think he rams through an amnesty, immigration reform, or whatever you want to call it. And I think he goes a lot further toward carbon tax, toward all sorts of other environmental regulations that are waiting. There's this huge regulatory framework that's about to be implemented. They've been holding up on it. This second term is going to be regulation heaven for those who want it.
Let me bring in
Kirsten.
Well, I mean, actually, you just laid out probably the two biggest things that will happen if Obama has his way. Immigration reform, but the reason immigration reform is going to happen is because of what Bill was saying, is that there are Republicans that are chastened and are going to work with him on it. Otherwise, it wouldn't happen. So that will be one major accomplishment that he will certainly try to get done. And I think you're right on the carbon tax as well. The climate change is going to be a major issue.
But do you agree with Laura that he's not going to move to the center? In fact, he's going to double down on liberal, progressive,
well, I mean, the problem is Laura and I are never really going to agree on where the president is. I actually think he's fairly moderate, so I don't see
him as,
I don't see him.
What issue is he moderate?
He did compromise on the tax cuts, for example, which is a major issue for Democrats.
The one thing,
and he,
begrudgingly.
No, even in his health care legislation, you know, the public option was taken off the table. There are plenty of things that he's compromised.
All right.
On the Patraeus thing, everyone's saying it's tragic, and, well, that's a given. But I think we have some real questions here. We had the head of our intelligence in the entire country sending personal emails after he was named CIA to apparently this gal, Paula, after one report, Ron Kessler's report, is that she had broken off the relationship. He was sending scores and scores of emails. Some reports say thousands of emails from his personal account. And for Eric Holder, if he was the one who knew about this, and he had to have not brought this to the attention of the President of the United States, I think questions have to be asked. Was it not brought to the President's attention, if that's the case, because of a political concern? So national security and politics, which comes first? Who cares who's president? Our country is on the line. Our security is on the line. And our CIA director was apparently distracted enough by this, whatever this was, that he was sending scores and scores of emails from a personal account. I mean, this is insanity. And it's not just tragic. This is a national concern. Well, I think we have a Congress who better investigate this, and he has to get his tail up on Capitol Hill. So tragic, yes, but an outrage more important for the American people.
What Laura's talking about is as confirmed as all these other stories that are being told about the women. I mean,
well, the Washington Post and the New York Times has some pretty startling reporting today.
What I'm saying is that people need to be focusing on what she's talking about, which is if these emails were being sent, why aren't we talking about that? Why are we talking about
national security?
Broadwell's biceps.
Yeah, I mean, who cares about that? It's about the national security concerns of the country.
All right, we need to take a break here. As you can. And we're back now with the panel. Laura, how much trouble is the GOP in?
Well, it depends on how they react to this. If the reaction to the election is, let's dig into our core principles and try to remake them, I think the GOP will lose even more seats in 2014. If it becomes a bidding war with Republicans in this group or that group, whether it's Latinos or women, we're going to give you more stuff, or we're going to do Amnesty Plus, just to keep in line with Panel Plus, Chris, Amnesty Plus, or it's not going to work. But the Republicans, I think, have to take a lesson from, and I hate to bring up Reagan again, but When Goldwater got shellacked in '64, Bill Buckley and Brent Bozell Sr. and all these conservatives got together and they said, we're going to figure out how to sell this idea of economic conservatism and the conservative framework to new voters. And they went into the South and they transformed Mississippi and Alabama, all these places where people had never voted Republican before. It took time. And it took a lot of introspection. But it wasn't them deciding, oh, our entire framework of ideas, it's wrong. So it depends on how they react.
Kirsten, let's look at the exit polls, which point out some of the challenge that Republicans face. Let's put them up on the screen. Republicans lost women by 11 points, Hispanics by 44 points, and young people by 23 points. What does that tell you?
Well, I think... Well, first of all, losing women by 11 points isn't really that new because they lost them by 13 points last time. It's more interesting to look at the swing states where there was a much bigger swing. And I think that if you want to look at something recently that happened that's similar to this, I'd say 2004. And that's what this reminds me of. This reminds me of the day after Democrats, just absolutely falling apart. Oh my gosh, we have this new conservative majority. How are we going to change to attract them? And so I think there is a little bit of an overreaction on the right, except for on the immigration issue. I do think that because of the demographics of this country, that the Republicans are going to have to figure out a way to attract the Hispanic vote, and they're going to have to do a better job with women, but they actually could win an election still with that gender gap. It's just like I said, if you look more at the states where the Obama administration bombarded women with messages, you saw much bigger gaps.
We've heard this Tea Party thing. We heard it in 2006, right? I mean, 2006, too far right, it was called then. We had some bad candidates, no doubt about it. Murdoch and Agin, terrible candidates. Why did Scott Brown lose in Massachusetts? Why did we lose the North Dakota Senate seat? Because of the Tea Party? If it weren't for the Tea Party folks and the energy that they brought to the fore, Republicans would be in a disaster right now. Doesn't mean they have to not nominate great people. Bill's right about that. But the Tea Party, how many times can they get blamed for moderates losing seats? Come on.
This has been a Sunfish production.